Hello, I'm Jeff Paur, senior writer with RealTime Fantasy Sports, and welcome to the RealTime Fantasy Sports Show. It is time for our wavering video for Week 16 of the fantasy football season. I'm going to be joined today once again by Logan Glaser, who is a contributing writer here at RealTime Fantasy Sports. We're going to talk about some of our favorite picks for the week. Logan, thanks so much for joining me as always. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Jeff.
Interesting week because it's likely the first week of the playoffs or second week of the playoffs, depending on what kind of format you're in. And there were some injuries, unfortunately, last week, and hopefully you don't have to scour the waiver wire too much, but it might be out of necessity. I hate to say it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we had several injuries last week. Also with some crazy games. Probably the two craziest games of the season happened last week with the Patriots fumble at the end of regulation and also the comeback by Minnesota.
I'd like to know how many people won their game or lost their game on that play with the Raiders because it had to happen. But
Yeah,
I would hate to be an owner that lost because of that. That would be just absolutely brutal.
some bad beats and also some top injuries now that we have to kind of scatter through, especially with Jalen Hurts probably being the main one.
Yeah, Jalen Hurts, Jonathan Taylor too.
Jonathan Taylor also.
Yeah, those are the two big ones. So let's jump into it.
Yeah, for
Talk
sure.
about some of these options. So QB, some people might be looking for a QB this week because of the Hurts situation. They're not ruling him out totally yet. I just saw a report on that, but I doubt he plays. So if you're looking for a QB, who do you like?
Yeah, QB, I'm going with Gardner Minshew as his backup. Minshew is probably one of the best backup quarterbacks in the NFL currently. Last year, he made 2 starts for the Eagles, including one against the Cowboys. He threw 2 touchdowns in that matchup. He also had another game where he threw for 242 yards and also 2 touchdowns. So he's capable. He's a very capable starter, and you're putting him into an elite offense, good offensive line. You got a star wide receiver, A.J. Brown. Dallas Goedert should be back this week as well. And they're also playing in a dome. It's not the best matchup for him this week playing Dallas, but what I really like about that is that game's taking place in a dome. There's going to be a lot of weather concerns this week, lots of cold, a couple games that snows in the forecast. So I really like him in a dome atmosphere.
Yeah, I think it makes the most sense if you own Hurts and you need a QB to get Minshew. Definitely is a good move there. For me, I'm going to look at Brock Purdy with the San Francisco 49ers. He has scored multiple touchdowns 3 straight games. His numbers aren't really, off the charts, but they're solid. He's more than capable in two quarterback leagues and even some low end, even some regular leagues as well as a low end number 1 QB in my opinion. And he gets Commanders this week and the Raiders after that. So that's 2 pretty good matchups. He's available in 62% of leagues on our site as well. So I think Purdy's a guy I would look at grabbing. Again, guy in a good situation and a good offense, kind of like Minshew as well. All right, let's move on to that running back spot. Who do you like at running back? Couple pickups.
Yeah, first running back I'm going to be looking at is Tyler Algier. So this is basically a volume play. So he's had 3 straight games of 10 plus carries per game. Last week he had 17 carries, and he finished in the top 10 running backs on the slate last week. He had 22.9 fantasy points. And Atlanta's really relying on the run game, especially last week with Mariota out. That's going to be even more rushes for the running backs with him and Patterson. Desmond Ridder didn't seem all the way there, capable of running that offense, especially through the air. So I think they're going to rely on the ground game again against Baltimore. So I'm going to be looking to pick up him if he's not already owned in your league. The second one I'm going to be looking at is Deion Jackson. So it's kind of between him and Zach Moss. I think Zach Moss is still going to be the lead back for the Colts, but what I love most about Deion Jackson is his PPR with receptions. In week 6, he had 10 receptions. Zach Moss has not caught a pass since week 3. So I think it's going to be Zach Moss through the ground and Deion Jackson through the air. Jackson had 12.6 fantasy points last week, including a reception touchdown. So I like him as a PPR back this week.
Yeah, so I have Moss as one of my picks here, but I'm kind of like you. I kind of like Jackson. If I had to pick of the 2, in my opinion, like you said, Moss might be the starter, get more carries, but Jackson is better through the air, catches the ball well. So I think he might have a little bit of a higher ceiling. That said, though, like I said, Zach Moss is on my pickup for this week, and Jonathan Taylor, like you said, he's out, probably going to split work. Moss might get more carries. So I'm intrigued by him. I think he's worth adding in most formats, especially if you own Taylor, you're looking for a running back. He's available in 94% of leagues on our site. So Moss is definitely a guy that's going to get picked up in a lot of leagues this week. My next pickup is Marlon Mack with the Denver Broncos. So he isn't starting for Denver. Latavius Murray is actually playing pretty well right now, but he's getting plenty of time in a backup role. Mack is. He has touchdowns 2 straight games, top 15 fantasy points each of those games. He had a season high 9 touches last week. He's a little touchdown dependent, but he's scoring touchdowns on a regular basis at this point. So as long as that keeps happening, I think he has fantasy value, and he's available in 91% of leagues as well. Let's move on to the receiver spot now. How about a couple receivers you're looking at this week?
Yeah, first wide receiver when we're looking at is KJ Osborne, and what a week he had. He's available in 89% of leagues currently, so he's out there. And Jefferson had 30 fantasy points. Dalvin Cook had 28, and who would have thought KJ Osborne would have led the Vikings with 31.7 fantasy points? Absolute monstrous day for KJ Osborne, and he's had 2 solid weeks in a row. The week before that, he had 15 fantasy points. So he's put 2 solid weeks together. The game script probably won't be there exactly how it was. Passing the entire 3 quarters, it basically seemed like the Vikings were. But I really like his matchup this week against the Giants in a dome game as well. I think that's very crucial as well. So I like him this week. Next one is Rashid Shaheed for New Orleans Saints. I think this is more of a dynasty sleeper pickup. I don't think he's got the greatest matchup this week against Cleveland, and that's going to be a very low scoring game, and I'll talk about that game later. But he's a very boomer bust play. He's had 3 straight 50-plus yard games. He had a huge touchdown last week. And if you want a big play player, this is your guy to go get. He's a rookie, and I really like him in dynasty leagues. I might sit him this week, but he's a good waiver add to keep in mind for your championship week in week 17.
Yeah, it's never a bad idea, especially in dynasty leagues, to pick up some of these guys that could end up starting next year because of trade or emerging or whatever.
Sure.
So it's definitely a good idea. And if I'm not mistaken, I think you had KJ Osborne a lot early in the season on this show. Didn't you have him as a waiver wire pickup?
Yeah, I thought he was definitely going to be their number 2 wide receiver behind Jefferson with Thielen coming out. But he had a slow start to the year, but his last 2 games, he's looked dominant.
He has. Okay, my receivers. My first one is Marquise Goodwin with Seattle Seahawks. So Tyler Lockett's out, broke his finger. I think that is kind of an injury. It's getting overlooked a little bit because he's been really good this year, Tyler Lockett. So that's a big hole for fantasy teams to fill. Goodwin's been pretty good throughout the year, though. He has 2 games with 20-plus fantasy points, and that's when both those receivers have been in the lineup. So Goodwin definitely has some potential. It's a pass-first offense. He's going to have an expanded role. He's available in nearly all leagues out there as well. So if you're looking for a receiver this week, I think he can be a little boomer bust. I like his potential, though, in that offense. My next pickup receiver is Russell Gage with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It was kind of a popular pick before the season started. It hasn't really panned out most of the year, but he had an increase in playing time last week with Julio Jones out. He had 8 catches for 59 yards and 2 scores. As long as Jones is out, I think Gage has some value in this pass-first offense. He's available in most leagues as well. So if you're looking for another receiver this week, wide receiver number 3 or something along those lines, I think Gage could be worth a look for fantasy teams. All right, let's move on to tight end now. Logan, who do you like there as a waiver wire ad?
Yeah, tight end, I'm going to go with Noah Fant. I feel like with tight ends, there's so much hype around players, and that's what Fant has had basically the last 2 years. There's been tons of hype, but not much production. The last 3 weeks, though, Fant has had okay production. He's had two touchdowns in the last 3 weeks. He's getting okay yards, okay receptions, nothing stellar. But again, with Tyler Lockett also out of the lineup, I expect more targets to be headed towards Fant in Goodwin's way. So I'm going to be going with Noah Fant as my waiver wire pickup this week for tight end.
My pickup is a guy I've actually mentioned a few times on this show as well, and it's Juwan Johnson with New Orleans Saints. He's really emerged, in my opinion, as a legit low-end number 1 tight end. He had his best game of the season last week, 4 passes, 67 yards, and 2 touchdowns. This was his second 2-touchdown game of the season, though. He has 7 scores total for the year. I don't think he's just a touchdown-dependent player. He gets catches and yards as well. He's still out there in more than half the leagues on our site. He's available in 56% of leagues. So I think Johnson's getting overlooked at times. Again, the position's been all over the map, but I think Johnson's been fairly consistent on a weekly basis. And I think he's a good ad this week if you're looking for a tight end. All right, Logan, let's talk about streaming defenses for this week. This is a big one. All these points matter in the playoffs, so you want to make sure you can maximize those. Who's a defense you really like picking up this week?
Yeah, defense I'm going to be picking up is Cleveland. Cleveland Browns are playing New Orleans Saints this week. It's at home for Cleveland, and the over-under is set at 31.5. So last week I thought it was low at 36, 31.5 between Cleveland and New Orleans. The lowest ever over-under that I could find was 28. Long time ago. So, and this ranks as the 20th lowest projected over-under in NFL history. So I expect not too many points to be scored this week. We're going to get a lot of snow, cold temperatures, and two not very clicking offenses at this time. Andy Dalton also has tons of turnovers. So I think it's going to be mainly rushing both sides of the ball. So I'm going to go with Cleveland as my defense.
That's a crazy low number on that over-under. Wow.
There is.
My pickup's a defense I never thought I would recommend at any point this year, but they're playing better. It's the Detroit Lions. They're owned in just 8% of leagues. They have 4 sacks each of their last 2 games. They have at least 8 fantasy points, 5 of 7 games. They play the Panthers, not a very good offense, not explosive at all. They kind of, plod ahead with their 2 running backs, Hubbard and Foreman. They don't really make a lot of big plays in the passing game. I think the Lions could score some points in this matchup, and they're available in most leagues out there. So that's my pickup for this.
And they've got a great rush defense. Last week, they absolutely shut down Zonovan Knight and Jets. And the last couple of weeks, their defense has been amazing against the run. So I really like that play.
Yep, it has been great. And that's what they do well, Carolina. So you take that away, they're going to have to throw the ball, and that's not what they do well. Maybe they'll get some turnovers, get some sacks. So I like that matchup most definitely. All right, Logan, thanks for joining me once again. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Jeff. Should be another exciting week.
Should be a great week of football, and good luck to all you out there in your playoffs. Remember, most of the games are Saturday this week, so have a great holiday season as well. Enjoy that. Christmas, there's only a handful of games on Christmas, correct?
Yeah, 3 games on Christmas. So we got some NBA also on Christmas. Remember to do DFS Pick'em under the daily tab. That'll be running all throughout this weekend, especially on Christmas, and might have some promos up for that day.
Awesome. Yeah, the games are Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday this week, really kind of spread out. So it's going to keep everybody on their toes as they're trying to figure out if they've won their matchups this week. Should be fun, though. A lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it. All right, Logan, thanks again for joining me. This has been Jeff Paur with RealTime Fantasy Sports.
And this has been Logan Glaser from RealTime Fantasy Sports.
Have a great day, everyone.